Here's the truth. We, as humans, love to hold as a way of avoiding to feel. But not everything that is held is honored. Some things are held because we are afraid to release them, because we are afraid of what might spill out, because we are taught that emotion makes us weak. But there's a cost to holding too tightly for too long. Hey everyone, welcome back to A Talk with G, the podcast where ancient medicine meets soul remembrance. I'm your host Gia, and today we've reached our final flavor in our sixth taste of Ayurveda series. This one is quiet, subtle, and often missed, and yet essential. Today we meet Kashaya, the Astringent Taste. Astringent is the rasa of pulling inward, drawing together what's been scattered. It's the taste of closure, contentment, and integration. It doesn't excite the senses, it asks them to rest. It doesn't provoke change, it stabilizes what already has begun. It doesn't stir, it seals. If sweet is the mother, and pungent is the warrior, bitter is the sage, Astringent is the monk, the librarian, the final prayer at the end of a long ritual. It is the taste that holds the ceremony in place. Kashaya is easy to overlook because its power isn't in its flavor, it's in its function. In a culture that idolizes the expressiveness, the loudness, the boldness, Astringent lives in the pause after the exhale. It is the taste of restraint, not repression, of integration, not indecision. It teaches us how to hold a boundary without building a wall, return to a center after expansion, close a chapter with grace, retain what matters, and release what doesn't with presence. And in time, when so many of us are overextended, overstimulated, and emotionally raw, Kashaya offers us a medicine we've nearly forgot how to receive: closure, stillness, and contentment. This is the rasa that is not most talked about, but is the one that completes the cycle. It's the last note in the song, the tightening of the structures, and the cooling of the fire. The taste of the walk home after the ceremony, the gentle no that protects your nervous system, the silence that allows the wisdom to land, the sacred pause that turns knowledge into embodiment. So if you're feeling scattered, emotionally leaked, or unable to hold onto your energy, if you've been giving too much, speaking too much, feeling too much without a place to land, then this rasa is your medicine. Let's explore it together. When integration becomes the medicine. In the rhythm of Ayurveda, everything flows in a cycle: haste, healing, time, transformation. And every cycle, no matter how wild, expressive, or expansive, needs completion, a closure, a moment where all the scattered pieces come home. This is the work of Astringent Taste, the final rasa, the one that doesn't scream, sparkle, or stir, the one that draws in, holds close, and whispers. It's time to rest now, time to collect what matters, time to return to yourself. If pungent moves and bitter clears us, Astringent gathers us. It brings the energy back inward. From the edge of expression to the center of self. It gathers all the tissues, it tightens what's loose, it pulls together what healing has opened. You've done the stirring, the shedding, the burning, the crying. Now, this rasa says, let's hold that, let's stitch that wound, let's protect what has been revealed. This is the rasa of contentment without contraction. It does not shut you down. It helps you hold what's been awakened with sacred discernment. In Sanskrit, sutra means thread. It's what holds things together, not tightly, but intentionally. Astringent is the sutra of the rasas, the thread that says the lesson is complete. This emotion has been felt. This expansion has found its edge. This offering is whole, and now it can rest. In our body, Kashaya has the energy of toning, tightening, and closing. It helps stop bleeding, seal broken vessels, slow down movement, pull moisture back into the tissue. It is literally the rasa that keeps you from leaking physically, emotionally, and energetically. And energetically, it keeps the power within. Kashaya slows everything down. It interrupts the momentum just long enough for us to ask, what actually landed in me? What do I need to carry forward? What needs boundaries before I move again? What is ready to integrate, not perform? This is the rasa about retention, but not hoarding. It's about honoring what still works, keeping what's still sacred, sealing what's been stirred so it can become a part of your foundation. On a subtle level, this rasa supports our ability to pause without collapsing, to feel without flooding, to return to center after intensity. It's the sacred after. The after the release, the after the tears, the after expansion, the after the boundary, the after the breakthrough, where everything inside of us is still vibrating, but you're starting to hold yourself together. This is why this rasa is deeply connected to the Vata dosha and why it must be used wisely, with grounding, warmth, and softness. Because too much Kashaya can make you tighten too quickly. You can make a contract in fear instead of closing with grace. But when you use consciously, it is the moment you step out of your healing as an event and into your healing as a way of life. This is the medicine of Astringent. It holds you without hardening you. It helps you pause without retreating. It teaches us to gather our energy, not because we're afraid, but because we are wise enough to know I do not need to spill to be seen. I do not need to speak everything I feel. I do not need to give everything I've got. I am allowed to preserve the sacredness, especially when that sacred thing is myself. This is the soft hand on our shoulder at the end of a ritual, the gentle nod that says, it's okay to hold now, it's okay to be quiet. You're not leaking anymore, you're whole. The stillness that holds, air and earth. Every rasa, every taste is an alchemy of elements, a meeting of two forces that shape how it feels in our body, our mind, and our emotions. Kashaya is formed from air, vayu, movement, lightness, subtlety, and refinement, with earth, pitravi, structure, stability, ground, and contentment. Together, these elements could create a rasa that is light but toning, dry but grounding, restrained but stabilizing, subtle but regulating. This is the energy of pulling inwards with presence, the subtle tension of a muscle contracting after it's been stretched. The quiet draw of a hug that says, come home to yourself. I've got you. These two elements seemingly are opposite, but they find a beautiful way, a beautiful harmony in Kashaya. They offer a container of subtleness. Air brings lightness, clarity, awareness, the capacity to move energy in a refined, intentional way. Earth brings solidity, support, physical structure, a sense of enoughness, of knowing when to stop. When balanced, it embodies boundaries that nourish, not isolate, reflection that supports growth, not ruination, closure that feels sacred, not suffocating. It's the quiet, wise voice that whispers, pause, breathe, let what you've learned settle in your bones. The sacred structure without rigidity. Now, Kashaya is known for pacifying our pitta and our kappas. With pitta's sharpness, intensity, and heat, those are soothed by this rasa's coolness. Contracting nature, it pulls excess heat out of the blood and liver and reduces inflammation, helping contain emotional overdrive. It reminds our pittas you don't have to push, you can hold. For our kappas, this rasa, with its dryness and subtle clarity, helps lighten a kappa's heaviness and slow metabolism, reduces congestion, tones in the tissues, and gently draws excess fluid from the body. For Kappa's emotional inherity, Kashaya is the gentle nudge inward towards contemplative movement. However, because Astringent shares air as one of its element roots, it can easily aggravate Vata, especially if used in excess or without proper grounding. Too much Kashaya can increase dryness, within the skin, joints, and digestion, emotional withdrawnness, nervous system sensitivity, spiritual disconnection. Mass is detachment. For our Vata types, Astringent must be balanced with warmth, rhythm, and rest. It should be used as a steel, not a strategy. In Ayurveda, Kashaya is not about denial. It's about dignified holding. The kind of holding that contains energy so it doesn't scatter, integrates what has been stirred, preserves what is sacred, creates pause as a form of wisdom, not punishment. We could feel Kashaya in the quiet after the big realization, those aha moments, the cool wrapping of a soft cloth after a hot bath, the stillness that follows emotional release, the movement when we choose to listen instead of speak. This rasa does not stop your energy. It holds it in a higher form. It moves us from expression to embodiment, from reaction to integration, from movement to maturity. This rasa carries the energy of the womb, the cradle, the cupped hand. It's not flashy, it's not fiery, but it's essential, especially in a world that rewards exposure over contentment. This rasa teaches us you don't always need to give it all away. You don't need to say everything you know. You're allowed to be full and be still. This taste is for the healers who've been leaking energy, the seekers who've been overstimulated, the teachers who give too many answers without space for their own. Kashaya gathers you, not to stop you, but to strengthen your center before you begin again. When holding becomes healing. In a world that glorifies openness, expression, and emotional release, it is easy to forget that contentment is medicine too. That boundaries can be sacred, that the pause is not where the energy dies, it is where it integrates. Kashaya brings the body and soul into a state of graceful closure, not finality, but completion. When used with presence and reverence, Ashton becomes the taste of sovereignty. It teaches us how to retain our essence, how to hold what is sacred, how to say, I am no longer needed to give everything away to feel connected. On a physical level, Kashaya tones, binds, and contents. It's deeply respected in Ayurveda for its ability to cool, dry, and pull inward what has been excessively inflamed or scattered. Ashwagandha stops excess and promotes restoration, tightens and tones tissues, aiding in wound healing, internal repair, supports digestive integrity, and especially in the cases of bloating or gas. Cools inflammation, especially in the intestine and mucous membranes, restores strength after depletion by gently sealing the energy that leaks and rebuilds everything. This rasa tells the body, let's close the open door, let's rebuild, let's preserve what remains. It is often the first rasa recommended post detox, post illness, when the body needs quiet, toning, and recollection. Emotionally, Kasya is the rasa of restraint without repression. It doesn't suppress, it holds. It doesn't shut you down, it gives you discernment about when and where to open. When welcomed consciously, this rasa supports emotional and energetic well being in profound ways. Kashaya teaches us that not every feeling needs to be shared. The silence can be sacred, that your emotions are valid, but they're also yours to hold and honor with intention. It heals the energetic leaks for those who are overgiving, oversharing, and emotionally drained from being around others. Ashton becomes a shield, not a shell. It says keep your essence closed. You don't need to spill to be seen. It supports post process and emotional integration. After a big release, a trauma trigger, a breakthrough, a deep cry, this is the rasa that brings you back. It seals the wounds and wraps up the space and lets your nervous system exhale into wholeness. Because this is the rasa that holds the pause as sacredness. It tells you you do not need to rush into the next thing. You are allowed to sit still and feel full. You're allowed to hold something in your heart without immediately expressing it. This is the container that says, I trust myself to hold what's tender. So often we equate healing with openness, with saying it all, feeling it all, sharing it all. But Astrin brings spiritual maturity. It teaches timing, boundaries, the wisdom of silence. It helps us move by processing to embodiment, releasing to remember, from feeling to holding.
because there is a difference between emotional purging and energetic sovereignty. And Kashaya says you do not have to prove your healing. You could simply live it. You do not need to taste chickpeas, turmeric, or an unripe banana to receive Kashaya. You receive it when you pause before speaking and let silence speak first. You choose to process something privately before sharing it publicly. You say not yet instead of saying yes to every opportunity. You sip on a warm tea in a quiet room instead of reaching for your phone. You listen deeply without needing to fix or respond. You choose stillness over strategy. These are all acts of sacred restraint. These are how you build the container that your healing deserves. This is the taste that reminds us of who we are. After everything else has been released, it is the scattered after of healing. The moment when we look around inside and say, this is what I'm keeping because this is who I've become. And in that stillness, something rare happens. We begin to trust ourselves again, not because we said it all, but because we've learned to hold on to what matters. This is the quiet medicine of Kashaya, the taste of refined power, the taste of completion with consciousness. When holding becomes hiding, Kashaya is a sacred seal, the rasa that gathers, stabilizes, and integrates. It teaches us to hold on to what matters, how to pause, how to discern. But like all medicine, when misused or misunderstood, it becomes something else entirely. It turns from wisdom, restraint to rigid suppression, from sacred pause to perpetual postponement, from quiet sovereignty to emotional shutdown. In its shadow, Astringent can convince us that being sound is being strong, that staying still is being safe, that holding back is the same as being in control. But healing doesn't come from hiding, and wholeness does not grow in the dark. When Kashaya is overexpressed, especially when the need is for boundary morphs into avoidance, there are certain patterns that show up. Emotional tightness, mistaken for contentment of control. We convince ourselves that not expressing emotion means we've mastered it. But what we're really doing is tightening, tensing the heart, tensing the voice, tensing the body in an effort to stay composed. We suppress, holding it all in all the time. We confuse privacy with secrecy. We start to believe that we are too much or that if we express anything, we lose love, credibility, or stability. So we tuck everything away and begin to hold this emotional bag that gets overfull. We look at spiritual like bypass. We use terms like non attachment or holding space to avoid discomfort. We mask disassociation as neutrality. We reject emotional vulnerability and call it maturity, when what we really feel is fear. And then we have chronic pause, resistance from moving forward motion. We get so good at pausing, reflecting, and restraining that we stop moving altogether. We overanalyze, we hesitate, we pull off the action in the name of being measured when what we're really actually need is momentum. When action becomes excessive in food, lifestyle, emotion, it affects everything, mind, body, and spirit. But it does it so subtle that you don't even think of anything. Physically, it could show up as a dry mouth, dry lips, skin, or hair. Sluggish bowels, tight, stiff joints, fatigue, despite resting for 8 hours or less, despite resting altogether. Loss of appetite, constriction in the throat or chest, irregular dryness in reproductive tissues or menstruation. And emotionally, it shows up as withholding the truth due to fear of conflict, emotional numbness, or an inability to cry, difficulty receiving or asking for help, feeling isolated but not reaching out, chronic hesitation or second guessing, and emotional fragility masked by emotional silence. This is what happens when contentment becomes compression, when the sacred boundary becomes a barrier, when the pause never ends. But here's the truth: we, as humans, love to hold as a way of avoiding to feel. But not everything that is held is honored. Some things are held because we are afraid to release them, because we are afraid of what might spill out, because we are taught that emotion makes us weak. But there's a cost to holding too tightly for too long. Our bodies become dry, our heart becomes tired, our relationships become emotionally static, like a conversation always sitting at the surface. And while this might feel safe, it comes at the expense of connection to others and to ourselves. Healing our relationships to Kashya does not mean swinging to the opposite extreme. It means trusting that not everything needs to be sealed, that some things are ready to be expressed, that our voice, our tears, our hunger, and our movement is not dangerous. We are human. Our feelings are human. They're medicine. We learn to balance this rasa in the most simplest ways. Adding warm, moist food, soothing oils, emotional expression in a safe container, whether it's therapy, journaling, ritual. Somatic practices that invites softness, body work, intuitive movement, yin yoga. Sacred sharing with those who've earned the right to witness you. Saying yes when you feel called to, even if it feels risky. Because holding back our truth isn't spirituality, it's survival. And we are not here to just survive. We are here to heal. This is a rasa that asks us to hold, but not at the cost of our softness, not at the cost of our breath, not at the cost of becoming strangers to our own hearts. So I ask you to ask yourself, am I pausing to listen or pausing to avoid? Am I reflecting or retreating? Am I holding this emotion with care or bottling it in fear? Am I ready to let a little bit spill just to remember what I still feel? Contentment is sacred, but only if you make space for life to keep moving through you. Why is it so important to recognize a taste that really doesn't speak so loud? Because holding is its own kind of healing. There's a quiet power to this rasa, a power that doesn't need to speak to be heard, a medicine that doesn't need to be stirred to be felt, a sacred reminder that what is gathered with care becomes part of our foundation. Astringent, the final rasa, is the final rasa for a reason, because it doesn't offer stimulation, sweetness, or even clarity. It offers something even more essential: integration. It gathers the scattered pieces, seals what was raw, it closes a loop. And in a culture that's constantly urging us towards the next thing, the next release, the next breakthrough, the next offering, Kashaya whispers, pause, hold this. Don't rush away from your own beginning. Recognizing this taste is not about liking how it feels, it's about honoring what it teaches. Because this taste is the energy of completion without collapse, stillness without stagnation, boundaries without bitterness, contentment without control. It is what keeps us from leaking out everything we've just spent time healing from. It's what allows us to rest in the aftermath, the transformation, to trust that we don't have to perform, prove, or purge anymore. When we honor Kashaya, we begin to say, this is mine. I'm keeping this. I don't need to share it to be seen. I don't need to respond to be validated. I can hold my truth, and that is enough. We learn to seal, not just stir. Healing is not about just digging up old things. It's about knowing how to close the wound with care. And this is the rasa that gives you the skills to honor the endings as much as the beginnings. We learn to practice sacred restraint, not out of fear, but out of reverence. We learn that holding our energy, our stories, our rituals is not withholding. Wisdom, spiritual contentment. We learn to let completion just be enough. We stop trying to make every cycle bigger, louder, and more visible. We allow what's already healed to be whole. We stop reopening things that were completed. We learn that boundaries are seals. They're not just to keep people up. They're not meant to just have this big wall up. Because not everything is meant to be processed in public. Not every truth needs to be spoken to be honored. And not every emotion needs to be dissected. Ashran teaches us to discern when it's time to simply hold. And if sweet is the taste that says I am loved, and sour is I am alive, salt is I belong, pungent is I act, and bitter is I see. Astringent is the sacred embodiment of I know what to keep, I know what to hold, I know what to seal inside because it's become a part of who I am. It's the taste of emotional sovereignty. Don't mistake this with isolation, but the kind of inner clarity that makes connections more honest, the kind of embodiment pause that makes the next step more aligned, the kind of grounded reflection that makes healing sustainable. And at the end of every journey, every taste, every transformation, we are left with a choice. What will I carry forward? What belongs to my body, my heart, my practice now? This is the taste that says you do not have to carry it all. You just have to carry it well, with grace, with discernment, and with presence. Because when we choose what to hold, we choose what we are becoming. What we integrate, we embody. Thank you for walking with me through Kashaya and for journeying with me through all six rasas, each one in its own terrain of memory, medicine, and meaning. Asher asks very little of us on the surface. It doesn't demand attention, it doesn't flood the senses. But what it is offering completion, a way to end things without abandoning ourselves, a way to close the loop, not out of fear, but with care, and a way to say, this chapter is sealed. I'm not rushing ahead, I'm resting in what has already become. Because that's the quiet truth of healing. It's not always something about releasing. Sometimes it's about when we finally feel allowed to hold ourselves. Together, these six rasas have walked us through an entire terrain of being a human. Sweet taught us how to receive, love, to soften, to be nourished, to rest. Sour awakened our aliveness, our desire, our hunger to risk. Salt reminds us that we belong, that life is sacred because it's shared. Pungent stirred up the courage, give it permission to move forward, to burn, to speak. Bitter cleared our vision, helped us detox illusion and stand in our truth. And now, Ashran helps us hold the sacred silence that follows. These tastes are not just on our tongue, they are in our lives, our memories, our choices. They're in a way that we digest not just food, but experience, emotion, and evolution. So, as this series completes, I'm not going to ask you to remember every herb, every dosha pairing, or anything of those. Instead, I'm going to ask you to remember how each taste made you feel. And let that become your compass. When you're tired, return to sweet. When you're restless, reach for a sour. When you're lost, anchor in saltiness. When you're stuck, call in pungent. When you're overwhelmed, trust bitter. And when you're full, seal it with kashaya. Let food become ritual again. Let healing become a conversation with your senses. Let your body become the teacher, not the battleground. What you've tasted, you now carry. I hope this series brought you back to yourself, not as a project to fix it, but a presence to honor. And if you take one thing away, let it be this. The six tastes aren't about restriction. They're about remembering. Remembering how to listen, remember how to choose, remember how to live in alignment with your nature, and trust it again. Because healing isn't what you do in your body, it's what you become in your choices. And now that you've tasted each rasha, you decide with devotion, what do I need today? What will bring me to balance now? What am I ready to feel, to digest, to embody? The answer always lives inside of you. Thank you for being here, not just for the episodes, but for the entire journey. If the series stirs something up sacred in you, share it, tag me, and let's keep the conversation going, soul to soul. I'll be back with more seasonal wisdom, spiritual nourishment, and heart led healing soon. But for now, may you taste life more deeply. May you choose awareness. And may every meal, every moment, every pause become a portal back to your truest self. Take care. See you guys.